Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to talk with you about placing students within Read Naturally Live. Proper placement in Read Naturally Live is essential to its effectiveness. And so we'll go through the different options with regards to placement, as well as some sample students so we can practice the different scenarios you might find yourself in. So obviously, placing students is one of the teacher responsibilities. I know you have many of them. And within Read Live, there's planning and setting up. Then there's placing students, getting your students trained on implementing the steps, and of course, doing so, and then monitoring student performance. We have webinars, videos, and help pages for all of these topics. But today, of course, we are going to be focusing specifically on placing students within Read Naturally Live. When you are placing students, you, of course, are determining which level is right for them within Read Naturally Live. Not necessarily what their instructional level is or their independent level, but what level is right for them within this program, which series is right based on which level is right and what series are available at that level, and then what their story goal should be based on how they do on that placement. Okay, so we'll go through how those things are determined. And it is just important to realize that we consider conducting initial placement to be phase one of a two-phase process. So when you conduct initial placement, that's essential in order to get kids started or students started working in the program. After they've been working for a little bit, we like to do something called checking initial placement. And basically what you're doing there is you're taking data from the first few stories and deciding, is this the right level still based on the information I have now? We have something called Data Mentor that helps you determine whether or not it's the right level, provides suggestions based on student story data after the first, second, and third story for checking placement. Data Mentor does also provide suggestions for stories later in the process as well, but that checking initial placement is done with the first three. But we only have so much time today, so let's go ahead and get into our primary topic, which is conducting that initial placement. Now, this school year, we released something that was very exciting to us, which is student independent placement. We have always had teacher assisted placement, as you can see of the picture on the left side of your screen. There's a teacher and a student. The teacher is required in order to get the student in the right place. That's ideal, right? That's the gold standard of placement, if you will. There's nothing that is as good as the teacher when it comes to getting students in the right spot. However, I know your list of responsibilities is long and your time is short. And so in September, we released something called Student Independent Placement that uses voice recognition to determine which level the student should start in. Now, guess what? Voice recognition is not as good as a teacher. I know you know that. If you've used your iPhone or any other voice recognition software, you'll know that it sometimes gets things wrong. However, it is good enough to give them a place to start. And as I just mentioned a moment ago, Read Naturally now has something called Data Mentor, right? And that Data Mentor was released at the same time as Student Independent Placement because now the teacher will get suggestions after the first few stories. So if that independent placement wasn't done as well as it needed to be, those suggestions will appear for you, okay? So we're going to talk about the two different ways, and I'm going to show you how to go through them. And before we get into the exact examples, it's important to remember that we have a group of students with very diverse needs, right? Some of our students that we're going to work with really primarily have issues with fluency and likely comprehension as a result of the fluency issue, right? Some of our students, fluency is their primary focus for this program. We have other students who really just have phonics needs, and phonics needs to be their primary focus. And then a lot of students have both, right? Lots of times they are very connected. So some students have both fluency and phonics needs. I'm going to talk about each of these three categories. And we're going to start with the easiest one to start with, which is the students who only have fluency and comprehension needs, Rob and Anna. Okay, I'm going to show you teacher led, and I'm going to show you student independent placement with those two examples. Before I do that, for those of you who are totally new to Read Live, I want to just log into the teacher module and show you how to add a student or find out if your student is in there, and if they're not, add them. Okay, and then we'll get into showing placement. So let me just pop out of this PowerPoint for a moment, and I'm going to go into my Read Live account and log in as a teacher into a Read Live account. Okay. And when I bring myself to the home page, the place I go to find out if my student is in there or to add them if they are not is under the tile that's marked Student Setup. Notice that the first item is add or edit students. The second bulleted item is licensed students. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on that button. And I need to find out, before I add a student, before I click the one lone button in the upper left-hand corner that says add student, I should make sure that my student's not in there already. So the student I'm going to work with first is Rob. So I'm going to click on the hamburger icon next to the first name column. Notice that there's a header across the top of this table. The second column over is first name. If I click on that hamburger icon, it allows me to filter. I type in Rob and click apply, and I can see that there are no students named Rob in this account right now. So Rob is not in there. In order to clear the filter, I click back on that hamburger tile, hit reset, and all those students appear. I did that just to make sure he wasn't already in there, okay? Once I know that for sure that he's not already in there, I click the add student button and I enter Rob. Robertson. We're going to say that Rob is a fourth grader. Okay. We enter his user ID and his password. And then we have to say yes to license this student. If we do not say yes to license this student, the student cannot work in the program. They need to have a license in order to do so. Notice that the student automatically gets access to Read Naturally Live. That's the program we're talking about placement in today. They also get automatically access to 1 Minute Reader Live, the independent reading program. So if you want to do teacher-led placement and you got 7 kids in your room, your students can begin working in the independent program of 1 Minute Reader Live. And they will work in 1 Minute Reader Live, which will free you up to pull one student at a time, right? To do your teacher-led placement. Okay. So now I click either save and add another, or in this case, I'm going to click save and close. And now my student Rob has been added to the account. Okay. We're going to pop back to the PowerPoint for just a moment and talk about what the first steps are when we are doing teacher-led placement. Notice again, the picture in the right corner, student and teacher together at a computer. The first thing the teacher has to do is estimate the reading level that she thinks the student might be reading at. She could use standardized assessments, state tests. She could talk to a teacher he had last year or maybe in the fall, which would be even better, right? Or look at oral reading fluency assessments. So when we're taking a look at Rob, Rob is a younger student. He's only a fourth grader. I know he's well below expectation on standardized tests. He's currently struggling with fourth grade novels. He's below expectations. So I'm going to do teacher assisted placement with him. That's what I'm going to walk you through. But remember what I just told you we had to do first. First, we have to estimate what level we think Rob's reading at. So based on the information we just mentioned briefly, the fact that he's a fourth grader, the fact that he's well below expectations, the fact that his current English teacher said he's struggling a little bit with fourth grade chapter books and he's below expectations on those fall assessments. What level might you start testing Rob? If he's a fourth grader and he's struggling with fourth grade novels, I might start him at 3.0. Now, the good news If you thought a different level in your head, it's okay. You're still going to get to the right spot. Okay, so now let's go ahead and go back into the program, and we'll hit the second bullet on this demo list, which is the placement test. Okay, I'm going to go back into my Read Live account and navigate back to my home screen by clicking on the picture of the house in the upper left-hand corner. In order to place students in Read Naturally Live, I need to go to the tile that is titled Read Naturally Live. Notice the first item on the bulleted list beneath it says, place my licensed students. Okay, so that's what I want to do today, right? We're going to do teacher-led placement within Read Naturally Live. Now, I just added Rob. Notice he's listed right down here, Rob Robertson. And if I scroll over to the right, I can see that there's a button that says place. I can also see that the next few columns are empty for Rob because he hasn't been placed yet. Notice most of the other columns are filled in because those students have already been placed. Okay. So when I have Rob sitting next to me at my computer, once he's there and we're both looking at the same computer, I can click the place button. It provides us with instructions at the top of the screen. I don't like reading instructions. Most people don't, although some people oddly do, but I am not someone who likes it. So I want to assure you that even though you may not like reading instructions, they're really short. And so these ones you can probably handle. And it says what I've already told you. It says to begin, estimate the student's reading level and select the corresponding placement testing level below. Okay, so we decided, or I said that my suggestion would be to start testing Rob in level 3.0. Okay, he's a fourth grader, struggles with fourth grade novels. I'm just going to start him a year below and see how he does. So here are all the testing levels. I want you just to notice that there's another column over on the right, and there is an I in each of the rows in this column. If I click on one of the I's, it tells me which series are available at these levels. So at the early second grade level, there's the sequence series. There's also the phonics series. Blends and digraphs are taught. At 3.0, I have the sequence series. There's a few phonics series options in here, and I have the idiom series. Students who you want to end up in a phonics series, teacher-led placement is ideal because student independent placement only puts students in the sequence series. Okay, now you can adjust it. You can alter it once you get them in the right readability level. But if you think it's very likely you want a student working in the phonics series, then it may be best to do teacher-led placement. Okay, so now Rob is sitting at the computer with me. We're both looking at this screen. I click the next button and I say to Rob, read for me as well as you can. And as soon as you start reading, I'm going to start this timer. So Rob now reads out loud for me, right? As he's reading out loud to me, I am keeping track of any mistake Rob makes. Okay, so if he omits a word, that's a mistake. If he reads it incorrectly, of course, that's a mistake. If he inserts a word, we don't count those as mistakes, okay? So you're just going to keep track of any errors that Rob has as he's reading this passage out loud to you. When the timer sounds, you're going to be instructed to click the last word that Rob read, and then you will enter the number of missed words in this box. So you are telling the computer how far he got on this passage, and then you're telling the computer how many mistakes he had. So this, again, is the gold standard of placement because you are going to be accurate when you are there with the student. Okay, so you can enter the last word he read and how many mistakes he had as he's reading out loud to you. If he places in this level, you're done. So if your estimate is really good, this can take you less than 3 minutes. Okay. On average, takes about 2. So we're going to click on the last word Rob read. Then I can enter mistakes into that box and I click next. Oh, it says 3.0, reading 65 words correct per minute. That is outside the placement range. So the computer says that the results do not fit in the placement range. So we cannot recommend a level, but it can suggest that you test him at 3.5. So it even lets you know which direction to go in that placement testing. 3.0 isn't right. Why don't you try level 3.5? Notice 3.0 is already listed as tested. So when I click next, I'm going to do the exact same process with a slightly more challenging level. Okay. Students are going to place in a level that's a little bit higher than their instructional level. Okay. And that's because they get audio support. They read along with audio support multiple times. They learn words they don't know. They solidify those high frequency words they're unsure of. And then they practice reading the same thing over and over and over again. And all of that support allows them to work just a little bit higher than they could if they didn't have that support. So if your student ends up in a level that's just a bit higher than you thought he was going to end up in, it's probably right. Doesn't mean he can work there on his own, but it means it's the right level for him within this intervention. Okay. So his Read Naturally Live level is the level that's right for him with this program. So now we click the last word he read on this one, enter the number of mistakes. When I click next, I can see I have all of these options because in level 3.5, Rob's score doesn't fit within the range again. Okay. Remember 3.0, it said, oh, 65 means he's doing too well. Try 3.5. Well, when I did, he got 55, which is outside the range on the low end. So the computer says to you, the student's results place him between two levels. When the student is placed between two levels, you need to determine which of these you want to be the level the student's working in. Okay. So the reason I do Rob as the teacher-led placement is because of this scenario. Sometimes this will happen. Okay. If it does it in the student independent one, the computer will pick the lower one. Okay. If it's in the teacher-led one, then the teacher gets to decide. So if you know that Rob struggles with vocabulary, you may decide to put him in a lower level. If you know he's got a really good oral vocabulary, you may decide to put him in 3.5. You're just going to use what you know about Rob to make that determination. I know that Rob has a very low self-esteem. Let's say he's struggling. He needs to be successful right away. I'm going to put him in the level that's just a little on the easier side. Okay. I've got a question that came in asking about whether or not the passages can be printed for placement. They absolutely can be, and I'll show you in just a moment. So when I click on level 3.0 and I click next, I've got a pop-up window that says the following assignment will be saved for Rob Robertson. He's going to be put in that level, series, and goal. Okay. And the way that the computer picked that goal was it took how he did on the level that we placed him in. He read 65 words correct per minute on 3.0, and it gave him 30 words added to that score, which is 95. So that is his story goal. Okay, it's just his story goal within the program. All right, so Rob is all done. Now, I am in Read Naturally Live. There's a print stories button in here. And you can print the placement stories by going in. So I'm sorry, I should back up. This print stories means you can print any story from any level. You can print all the stories or a specific one. So that's for the program. But if you want to print the placement stories, you need to go under that place button and click in the lower right-hand corner. It says print placement passages. Oh, It's like one of those Peter pickled peppers. You're going to print the placement passages through that link. So just one more time to show you. For the passages within the program, under the Read Naturally Live tile within the staff module, there's a print stories button. If you want to print the passages for placement, when you go under the place button, that is where you can print those stories specifically. Okay, so thank you for asking that question. All right, now let's talk for a moment about Anna. Anna's a seventh grader. Seventh graders, I think, probably would do pretty well with student independent placement. So that's what I'm going to have Anna do. She's going to go through student independent placement. She's not going to need me. Okay. Anna's well below expectations on standardized tests. She's struggling with sixth grade novels. She's below on her formal benchmark assessments. She's a seventh grader. So I'm going to have her do student independent placement. Now, we have a video on training students how to conduct student independent placement. It's really short. It's a nice thing for them to watch right before they do it. And I just had that, Christy just put that link in your chat box. So go ahead and click on it or copy and paste it. This will teach your students how to do the student independent placement. Okay. So that video is going to show you that the student needs to log into the student module. It will enter her account ID, her user ID, and her password. And when she lands on this page, she can get started in 1 Minute Reader right away. Okay, that's the independent program. So if you want to do teacher-led, she can click on this 1 Minute Reader Live and start working in the independent program while you call one kid at a time to do teacher-led. But if you're going to do student independent, then she can click on this conduct placement test, and she will be asked if she has a teacher working with her or not. She can say, yes, the teacher is with me. If she says, yes, the teacher is with me, the computer is going to ask the teacher to put in the teacher login, and then you can do teacher-led placement. So even if the student logs in as the student, if you decide you still want to do teacher-led placement, you can still do that. When she clicks conduct placement test, you're just going to click on yes, the teacher is with me button, enter your teacher login, and then it looks exactly like it does what I just showed you. Okay. But now what we're talking about is student independent. So Anna would say, no, I'm working by myself. It's going to tell the student that she's going to be recorded, so she should read clearly. She only has one chance to read the story. So she can turn on or off the reading guide. If she doesn't like it, she can turn it off. It's on by default. And then when she clicks start timing, she's going to read. She can advance the pages down at the bottom. Okay, so she's going to read clearly. Voice recognition is going to determine that's not a good fit. Let's try another one. It might try a second, a third, a fourth, until you find the right level. Now, what's going on behind the scenes? The student doesn't see this, but basically what's happening is the computer's listening to her read. She will click the last word read, but remember, the computer knows the last word read, okay? So if she clicks the incorrect one, they will count that difference as errors, right? And if she doesn't fit within the range, so if on level 5.0, she reads 85 words correct per minute, which is outside that range on our placement table, she doesn't see this information, but that's what's happening behind the scenes. What she sees is, let's try another story. It might be a better fit for you. So then she's going to be asked to do the exact same thing on the next story up, 5.6. So now when she reads this and the computer listens to her through voice recognition, she reads 82 words correct per minute on this one, and that is right within the range. So behind the scenes and the little algorithm within the computer, it says, oh, that fits nicely. So what the student sees is we found a level and story goal that seemed to be a good fit for you. Click next and start working in the level. Now that story goal is based on her placement score for that level. So on 5.6, she read 82 words correct per minute. Anna is an older student, so the computer added 40 and rounded. So her story goal is 120. Okay. As soon as she clicks next, she's brought to the page where she can get started immediately. Notice this is the select a stories page. As soon as she's done with student independent placement, she can start working in the program. And it's listed right here in the upper right-hand corner, which level and story goal was selected for her based on her student independent placement. Okay, so Anna's done. Now, you get to choose. Some kids you might think, oh, for sure that kid can handle it. Others you might think that kid can never handle it. And it might be based solely on what your time is and how many kids you have. All of those things are fine. Know that Data Mentor is going to provide feedback after the first, second, and third story, whether you do teacher-led or student independent placement. Okay, so you're going to get that feedback, but it is imperative that you take them through this process. Otherwise, there's all sorts of issues that can happen within the program if you just manually assign them. Now, we do have one exception to this placement table. So if you give a student level 1.0 and they are outside the range on the low end, so if you look down in the lower right-hand corner where you see the table and you see that level 1.0, let's say she read only 24 words outside the range on the low end, she can still work in either 1.0 or 0.8 if she knows her beginning sounds and can read about 50 written words. Okay, so she knows some high frequency words, she can decode some CVC words, then she can work in those lowest levels. I strongly encourage you to consider putting her in the phonics level first. It's easier than 1.0 and it provides some CVC short vowel sound suggestions. So I have a question about what the difference is between phonics and series. I can see the phonics will be focused on each level. If I choose the sequence level, will it not show phonics practice? Exactly. So if you have a student who has a phonics need and reads at a level where that phonics need is taught, then the phonics series is a good option. I'm going to talk about that more like right now. So your question was perfectly timed because that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. So in the phonics series, there is phonics instruction, there is phonics and decoding practice. Many of the words in the stories are dedicated to the sound of the phonics pattern. There's a word list at the end where students practice reading words in the word family, and there's a spelling activity. Okay, so if your student, let's say, reads at a second grade level, and over here we can see the phonics level that is about the same readability as 2.0 is 1.8. Well, 1.8 teaches blends and digraphs. If your student needs to work on blends and digraphs and they read at an early second grade level, that's likely to be a great opportunity for that student. Okay. But what if your student reads at a mid third grade level and struggles with blends and digraphs? You don't want to work with them in the phonics series. You don't want to hold them back just to address that phonics need. Okay, and I'm going to talk about what you do in that case. But if your student reads at or below a read naturally level 3.0, then they can likely work in the phonics series. So that example I just gave you, you know your student reads at about a second grade level. If that student struggles with blends and digraphs, you're going to give them level 2.0 in the placement test. And if they fit in that range, you're going to assign 1.8. 1.8 will appear as an option in your menu. Okay, and I'm going to show you a screenshot of it in just a minute. If the student does not fit in the range where their phonics need is, you're going to have to teach phonics and fluency and comprehension separately. Okay, we have Word Warm-Ups Live within the Read Live suite of programs. If you have a Read Live account, you have access to Word Warm-Ups Live. It's a great phonics and decoding program. Students can utilize that. If you have another phonics program that you like, you can utilize that too, whichever is best in your setting. But Read Live does contain that Word Warm-Ups Live, which I'll talk about more in a moment. But let me give you some examples. I'm a person who I like to imagine a little face and a little person and see how it works. So we'll talk about this student, Ella. Ella's a second grader. Many of your young students, your first graders, your second, and even your early third graders are likely able to work in the phonics series. So I know that Ella struggles with long vowels and I think she's reading at about a mid-first grade level. So I am going to give her level 1.5 in that placement test, just like I showed you with Rob. If she fits within that range, if her score on level 1.5 is within the range, as you can see in this example, it is 45 is right within the placement range. It's telling me to stop testing and pick a level. And look, I have all the options available to me. If Ella doesn't struggle with long vowels, I'll just put her in the sequence series. She'll get a little bit more work in vocabulary. She'll have an option to have a written retell at the end. Okay. But if I know she struggles with long vowel pairs or silent E, I'm going to put her in there, right? Because now what a great opportunity to work on all the things in the same place. So I know Ella needs to work on long vowel silent E, so I am going to select that option for her. And Ella will work on phonics. She will work on fluency. She will work on comprehension, all within that program. She'll get decoding and encoding. She'll get quiz questions and repetitions and read-alongs, all within the phonics series 1.3. Now, Evan is a fifth grader, and Evan needs fluency and phonics work. It's very common, especially our fifth graders. They were kids during COVID when there wasn't class or they had masks on. They couldn't learn the phonics properly. We have a lot of students in fifth, sixth grade a lot more students than we've had in the past with phonics issues. Those students are rarely going to be good fits for the phonics series because they often read at a mid-third grade level or above. So their fluency needs and their phonics needs don't line up. So with this example, Evan's a fifth grader. I think he's reading at about a mid-third grade level. So I'm just going to give him that level in placement. And turns out he fit right within it. So even though he has a phonics issue that's taught in the phonics series, I'm not going to hold him back to address that. I want him to work as high a level as he can for vocabulary and fluency and comprehension. So I am going to put him in 3.5. Okay, I have the option between sequenced and idioms. Okay. I'm going to put him in level 3.5 sequence series. I will work on phonics separately. Okay. He still needs to work on R controlled. In fact, one of the reasons he's stuck where he is probably is because he has that hole. So I have to fill it. But I'm not going to fill it with Read Naturally Live. I'm going to fill it with Word Warm-Ups Live or an outside phonics program. So for students who have only phonics needs or students whose phonics needs don't line up well enough for the phonics series, like Evan, those students can use Word Warm-Ups Live. Word Warm-Ups Live is one of the 4 programs available within your Read Live account. It reinforces phonemic awareness and phonics. It develops mastery and decoding, and it helps fluency development. One of the things I think it does incredibly well is, of course, teach the phonics pattern, the phonics sound, whatever it is, provide a lot of practice for decoding that, and to bring them to automaticity in decoding it. Not just letting them know what the phonics sound pattern is and give them a opportunity to practice a little, but to practice enough that they are automatic with it, which of course is that bridge to fluency development. So within Word Warm-Ups Live, we do have a Word Warm-Ups Live phonics assessment. So if you do not know what your students' phonics needs are, you can use our phonics assessment and then you can assign the phonics level and section that aligns with where your student's whole is. Okay. If you already know what your student's phonics issue is, then you can take a look at our scope and sequence and line it up and assign the level and section from our scope and sequence based on either a different assessment or what you already know. Okay, I can show you how we can get to word warm-ups within the account. Why don't I just do that real quickly here? So when you are logged in to Read Live, notice that there is a tile marked Word Warm-Ups Live. Okay, if I click on that tile, my students have access to Word Warm-Ups Live if they have the word yes written in this column that's a little bit off to the right side. It's just right of center. It says WW Ups Access. If there is no word in that column, doesn't have access to it. If there is a word yes, it means they do. Okay, so if you want to give the student access, you check their name and you click add word warm-ups live access. Okay, here is the phonics assessment. When I click on it, it opens in a separate box. And here is the scope and sequence. When I click on it, it opens in a separate, it's not a box, a separate window. Okay, so you have your own separate window. Now, I'm not going to get into real details on placement within word warmups because we have another webinar that is dedicated solely to placement and word warmups. But I do just want you to understand enough about it that you know what it is to make some educated decisions for your students, and know that a webinar on that is available on our website. So if Marcy, your first grader, she only struggles with phonics. She's okay on fluency for now, but she needs to work on decoding one syllable words. I'm going to give her this assessment to identify her earliest phonics need, and I'm going to place her in the right section. Okay. So if you do not have a phonics diagnostic, you can use ours. The instructions are there. The thing I like most about it is it provides you with a teacher script. So I don't know, using a new assessment or a new program is overwhelming at first. And if there's a script, the first few times I use it, it makes me feel a lot better, right? Because I know I'm instructing the student properly. So this assessment has a script, and you take the student through until you get to a place where they have too many errors or too many mistakes. And that indicates that the student needs to work on that skill, right? And again, there are instructions for all of this within that assessment. And Christy just put that assessment in the chat box. Thank you for doing that. So you can access it from your Read Live account. You can also access it from that link she just put in there. Okay. This assessment also tells you which level and section in word warmups the student should work in if she needs this section. And it tells you where that appears in Read Naturally Live phonics series. So it's all in there. You don't have to memorize where it appears in the phonics series. It tells you right within this assessment. So that's listed in there for you. But I'm not worried about fluency with Marcy. I'm only worried about long vowel. So I'm going to put her in level 1, section D of word warmups. That's the only program she's going to work in. She doesn't have to work in Read Naturally Live. I'm just going to address phonics with her with word warmups. Okay, you can do that. Your kids don't have to use Read Naturally Live if that is not a need that they have. Now, Evan was that student that we placed in Read Naturally Live. Remember, we said he struggled with R controlled. We knew it. We either did a different diagnostic or however we found out. I knew he struggled with R controlled. I placed him in Read Naturally Live in a level that's higher than where we teach it in the phonics series. Okay. We teach it in the phonics series in a mid-second grade level. I don't want to hold him back a whole grade level. So because I already know it, I don't have to give Evan another assessment. I can look at the scope and sequence, and I can see which level and section teaches R controlled. The red box is around it on the left. It's level 1, section G. Okay, I don't have to do the placement. I can just manually assign it. And Christy also put the scope and sequence in a link in that chat box. Thank you for putting that. So again, that can be accessed from your Read Live account, and it can also be accessed from that link that's there. So within the account is the phonics assessment, as well as the scope and sequence of Word Warmups Live, and both of those things also live on our company website. So Evan is going to work in Word Warmups Live level 1, section G, because I know that's where he needs to work. He's also going to work in Read Naturally Live level 3.5. He's going to work in both programs. Okay, it's very common. So Read Naturally runs a lab at a school near us. Most of the second graders are in a phonics level. Most of the fourth graders or fifth graders are in that need phonics work in Word Warmups Live and Read Naturally Live. They do both. Okay. Common question I get here is, well, what do you do if they're doing both? Well, one way to do it is to have them work through all the steps in Read Naturally Live until they pass a story and they've completed a story within Read Naturally Live and return to that select a story page. Then they can switch and go to Word Warmups Live. Then they can do all the steps within Word Warm-Ups Live, pass an exercise, get back to the select an exercise page and switch back. So switching at the pass step is a nice way to do it. If you have 45-minute intervention blocks, 40, 45 minutes, you could have that student start every intervention block with 10 minutes in Word warm-ups. So you just set a timer. They come in, they get their materials, they log into the computer. You set a little timer. In 10 minutes, the timer goes off. Everybody who's in Word warm-ups switches over to Read Naturally Live after the 10 minutes. And that works well when you have longer intervention blocks. But if you have a short intervention block, 30 minutes or less, it's best to switch at a pass step for each program. Okay. All right. So regarding the placement results for Read Naturally Live, that is recorded within the program. You don't have to write anything down. The computer will record how the student did on their placement tests, and you can run those reports after they're finished. Okay, so how they did on each passage and what your decision was. So we just talked about, and I just demonstrated how to determine level, series, and goal for each student through the two different means of placement. We've got teacher-led placement, which is ideal, student independent placement, which is ideal when you have no time, which I'm sure many of you are in that boat. So both are good, okay? And both, you will still get data mentor suggestions after the student passes their first, second, and third story. Because placement, even if it's teacher-led, is a short process. We don't want you to spend 30 minutes placing each kid. You don't have anywhere near that amount of time, and neither does the kid. He's got to start working in the intervention. So that data mentor provides you with information about comprehension as well, right? That you need to know. So if your student might be placed right fluency, but they need an adjustment because of comprehension, data mentor will provide that suggestion to you. Okay, so just know that that is in there for you to lean on as the students work through the program. I also like to just mention at this point, most of you who are in this webinar are probably just getting started working with Read Naturally Live. So we do have student training videos for Read Naturally Live. We also have them for Word Warm-Ups Live and 1 Minute Reader Live. So teaching students how to implement the program with fidelity. All right, so those student training videos are available on our website. They're also in this chat box. Thank you. We have a wonderful help page. It's readnaturally.com/read-live-help. It has videos on all these different things. There's step-by-step instructions in written form and pictorial form. And so that is a great resource for you to lean on as well. I'd like to thank you all for attending today. I appreciate your time and everything you do for your struggling readers very, very much. I'm going to answer one question that popped up before we're finished here. It's a great one that I wish I had mentioned on my own, so thank you. If you want to change the level, let's say you took a student through student independent placement and they placed in level 1.5 and you know they struggle with long vowel, right? And so you want to put that student in a phonics level. Well, you come in and you find that student's name. Okay. You scroll over to the right where you find the button that says edit. When you click on the edit button, now I can say, well, this student was put in the 2.5 sequence series, but I know this student struggles with R control. So I'm going to put him in. I know that now that he did that student independent placement and it said mid second grade level was right for him. So I know it matches. I'm going to come in here and manually change it to 2.3 R controlled soft C and G. Okay. You do have to add the word list goal, which a good place to start tends to be 40. 35 or 40 is a good place to start. So now we can see that that student has been switched to level 2.3 R controlled. Okay. You can also switch them to anything else you want. This recording will be sent tomorrow in an email. I appreciate you all taking time. There is a link to a survey at the end. So please, if you have a moment, just a couple questions, please fill that out. And please do reach out to us when questions and concerns come up throughout the year. That's what we're here for. So give us a call. We're happy to help. Have a great afternoon.